Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Making It. This is our very first episode of a Q&A series that we're going to be doing here on the podcast. Thanks so much for submitting all of your questions. Obviously, if you want to submit questions for future episodes, be sure to leave it in the comments below or tweet us over on Twitter. Gwilym, you have the first question for us.
So the first question is from Andrew, and it's, what's the difference between community-focused packaging versus growth-focused packaging on YouTube? Jamie, do you want to define those for us?
Yeah, I think it's best if we unpack that for a couple of people who don't know what the difference is between growth-orientated content and community content. Growth is obviously when you are trying to break out into a new audience, or to at least bring back your returning viewers, the people who subscribed or haven't subscribed, but are quite often casual viewers of your channel, with the full intention of like bringing in new eyeballs. Typically, this is the type of packaging that you will hear a lot of advice about on YouTube, of like, make sure that it's curiosity leaning, that it has like sort of a promise or a transformation. It's very clear in like the value of the video. You're way more intentional about trying to get new eyeballs in. And I think you have to be a little bit more serious with that type of packaging. On the other hand, you have community orientated videos. This is where you can be a little bit less serious, right? You can be a little bit more playful with your packaging, typically because the content format is more nurture content. So this might be your vlogs, this might be a Q&A, this might be an update video. You know, these are the types of videos where really it's for your core audience, the community, the fans who know and love you and watch every single video that you put out. And so with these types of videos, you can, you know, think about more intriguing titles for them rather than from a broad sort of market perspective of like, how do I get everyone to click this? I think from like a thumbnail perspective as well, like, you know, if you think of some of the update videos that people put out there, it's usually just a photo of the thing that they're updating their community about. So it might be like they're moving countries, or they just got married or something like that. And it's just a brief update for their audience. It's usually just a standard photo of that particular event. And then usually these videos are like a 40-minute rambly mess of just the YouTuber showing their true authentic self, just speaking from the heart. And you know, obviously growth videos, you wouldn't necessarily do that because it can affect various things in terms of the performance. But I think like those are some of the key differences really between the two different types of formats and the packaging. Do you have anything as well, you know, Gwilym, that you tend to see with this type of thing?
Okay, so I think an interesting example of community focused versus not is Matt D'Avella. All of his content is quite personal, but some of it stands out as more community focused because it's not promising anything to the viewer beyond a personal interaction. So his video, I'm on my own again, got 1.2 million views, one of his best recent videos in terms of performance, but it's clearly a community-focused video because it's him looking at the camera and it's entirely an update about his life. There is no promise of you will learn how to sleep better or you will become a better minimalist if you watch it. So for example, another video, I tried powerlifting for 100 days. If you click on that, you're probably thinking, maybe what could I get from powerlifting? How does it affect a person? It's not so much about your relationship with Matt. And then someone like Mr. Beast, say, only does growth-focused videos. All the videos, you only click on them because you want to see the thing that he's promising you will see. So like something big exploding or...
Yeah, I think that's actually a really interesting point. And like with Mr. Beast content, it's so growth-focused that I don't really feel like I know him. And I don't really feel like the content is about him. Like, I feel like as the years have gone by, he's sort of transitioned more to like game show host who's sort of there, who's the organizer. It's really about the contestants and their story to winning cash or competing or something like that. That's the main focus. It's never really about Mr. Beast. Whereas when you look at someone like Matt D'Avella or Thomas Frank or Ali Abdaal, you know, these like lifestyle productivity YouTubers, so they've always injected their personality, their life into the content and sort of how that's affected their fitness or their productivity or their business or whatever it may be. And I think that's always been like a nice blend where they've had these growth orientated packaging and videos, but you do get a bit of like the bond between the viewer and the YouTuber. So then when they do come along with this community video, it's like a big update or it's a Q&A where you get to know them a little bit more, you're way more likely to be like, oh yeah, I know this guy. Like I watch his previous videos. He's interesting, you know, or I like Matt or I like Ali. And then you want to kind of watch it. So yeah, I think like they take a completely different approach to it. And I think like that's the kind of channel that I would want to have, like an actual connection with your viewers.
There is a side note that videos that promise something particularly saucy or interesting can get a lot of clicks, even if people don't know what it is. So if someone posts an update saying that they've got some sort of awful illness, or that they're getting married and the photo is particularly engaging, or if they say, people parody this now, like that's a video that's like an important update, or I have something serious to tell you. Sometimes people just click because it's the most obvious, blatant curiosity gap possible, right? I have something big to tell you.
All right, so moving on to question 2. This one is from Amila, who asks, how do you use your YouTube analytics in an efficient way? Gwilym, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that question, especially I think it's interesting the use of an efficient way. How do you interpret that?
What's the 80-20?
Yeah. So the way I interpret that is, well, you got to think, what's an inefficient way of using it? I think an inefficient way of using it would be spending too much of your time trying to either figure stuff out in YouTube analytics when you don't know what to do, or looking at data that is sort of irrelevant or misleading. So I think so starting off, if you've got a smaller channel, like we have at the moment, we're under 1,000 subscribers. My advice would be, don't focus on your own analytics too much. Just look at what is working for other people. Make things that you think are good, that fit your subjective criteria for, I think this is great. And then verify that with other people. Tell people about your videos, get them to look at your packaging and see if they like it or not. And then once you've got maybe 10, 20 videos, you can start to sort of think about patterns. And the patterns you'd be looking for would be number of views, number of comments. You'd look at, watch time, and new versus returning viewers, I'd guess.
Just to jump in there, I think like even just keeping it super simple, the first thing you said is views. So like in the case of our channel, which you said it is very small, we have made 20-ish videos, and we kind of tried this new packaging style for a video, which had a kind of whiteboard style thing in the background, and it was a 1 of 10. And so we were just like, let's try that again. And it was another 1 of 10. And so then we did it a third time, and it was, 1 or a 2 out of 10. And that wasn't going into like anything like, what's the click-through rate and what's the blah, blah, blah. It was just, okay, every time we do this packaging, the views are pretty good. So we'll just kind of stick with that. So you can keep it pretty simple, I think, in that regard.
And the packaging and the idea was always, we are going to talk about a big YouTube topic like production or thumbnails, and that fitted with the packaging. So I guess, it was a whole format. We've been A/B testing thumbnails, but actually it's not really that effective when you've got as little data as we have. There are not enough people clicking. So instead of A/B testing, really what I've been doing is just being like, hey guys, what do we think is the best thumbnail? Let's just go with that. So
just to dive into the analytics a tiny bit more, like the place that I spend the most of my time as primarily a scriptwriter is in the retention side of things. Again, just to keep this super simple, the bits just to look at there and to focus on are the retention in the first 30 seconds, which can obviously be skewed by how many views the video is getting. If it's being served to lots of new viewers who've never seen you before, retention could be slightly lower. So just being mindful of that, because like new people don't know you as well, but you can still look for clues. If there's a huge negative outlier there, like 80% of people have left after those 30 seconds, there's something you're doing wrong with your hooks. The only other thing I think about with retention, I would say, to do this efficiently, is to not spend ages looking at every single spike and dip and trying to calculate like what's gone wrong. It's looking at the entire video first of all, and because often something that can happen is that a problem that occurs in the 3rd minute is actually the result of something that you did or didn't set up in the hook, or something disappointing you did in the 2nd minute that means the viewers don't really want to stick around to watch you disappoint them again during the 3rd minute. So watching the video in its entirety and judging the retention graph that way is much more efficient than not moving on from a spike until you've decided like why it happened, or a dip because you can't tell why it happened. you've got to view it in its totality.
Yeah, I think with retention, like the way that I see it is you have to be almost intentional about like what it is that you're measuring and wanting to change. I think a lot of people, they just upload a ton of videos and then they kind of just go back and look at, like you say, all of these spikes and dips and kind of not really make their mind up on what they're actually doing. It's just kind of like hoping something jumps out. And sometimes that does happen. But I think if you can look at it and go, I think this section, I just rambled for way too long. You know, for my next video, let me try and like condense that down and not spend 3 minutes. If it was a listicle video, let me not spend 3 minutes on point number 1. And then for the other 9 points in this video, they're about 1 minute to 2 minutes each. Just by like reducing that down, you actually allow more people to get to number 2, which helps them flow into 3. And then suddenly you can see, oh, okay, my retention went higher because I didn't ramble. If you do that with like multiple videos and you measure that with your attention, then you're actually way more intentional about what's actually causing issues within your videos. Whereas I think, yeah, a lot of people just kind of glance at it and hope that the penny's going to immediately drop and they're going to understand, okay, that's the thing. Whereas you kind of have to test it. And I think, like you said, George, when you have a ton of new viewers come in, it can skew the overall retention graph. But a lot of people I speak to, they don't even know that you can click see more and then break the new and returning viewers apart. And you have 2 lines in 2 different colors for your retention. And like, that's really fascinating to study actually, because if you're looking at just the overall retention graph, you can make the wrong conclusions because you can say, oh, this worked, but actually it worked with the returning viewers because they're familiar with you. But if you're really wanting this to be a growth orientated video that appeals to everyone, you really want to study the new viewers bar and say like, what did I do that they didn't like? You know, for some people, it might be that you're way too complex with your explanation of something, maybe using jargon and, you know, technical words that they just wouldn't get. But your returning viewers understand because they've watched the previous, 5, 10, 15 videos that you've put out. So you might want to reduce the amount of technical knowledge that you have to bring those new viewers up. And then that actually means that the video performs a little bit better with your community. So I tend to like break things apart like that when I'm like really focusing on certain metrics and measuring it. Otherwise, it can just get messy and you never really know what you're doing. I think that's when people are not efficient with analytics, is because they don't really know what they're doing. They kind of just come to the wrong conclusions. They're screwing around with their next few videos, and it actually sometimes can make things worse.
The big danger is that you take time away from making videos and thinking what could be good, and you just stare at the analytics. With that example, it's actually an interesting case. From what I've seen, that data is not, I haven't found it particularly useful personally, because I find that the lines just kind of mirror each other.
I've seen loads of graphs where they don't. They're very, very different. But it depends on like the YouTuber that you're working with, how big their audience is, the types of videos that you're creating. You do get some videos that are quite similar, but I have seen ones that are completely different. Because when it first rolled out, I saw a lot of retention curves that looked identical. And I was like, oh, I thought this would be really useful to split these 2 data points apart rather than having them merged. And then eventually I did start to see videos that were different, and you can glean some insights from it.
Yeah, I think one of the most useful things you can do is actually figure out what the definitions of the terms you're using are. So for example, returning viewers, is that people who've watched your videos in the last year? Or, as I just looked up, people who have ever watched any of your content? What does CTR actually mean? There are, if you Google it, you can find a list of definitions. YouTube has it in their kind of YouTube help website. And yeah, so actually knowing what all this stuff means is useful.
So let's say, can we try and kind of summarize this just so that we've got a short list really of the things that we're going to do with analytics to be using them in the most efficient way?
Yeah, I would say that for me, the overall metric that I like to really study is views, because that really is the thing that we're optimizing for. Is like, how do we get the most amount of people watching and enjoying the content? I look at other metrics in my 80-20 list would be views, splitting that up into new and returning viewers. I think it's important to see, are we getting people back? Are we retaining viewers from the past, but also bringing in new eyeballs? Subscribers is quite nice to look at. I don't study a lot because I don't think subscribers is that good of a metric in total for the channel, which people used to really value. But I do like looking at the subscriber metric because it's an action. A viewer had to say, yes, I want more of this, and they had to click the button. If you see that a lot, you clearly hit a nerve. You're doing something right. If you suddenly see you've got hundreds or thousands of more people clicking the subscribe button than not. So I tend to look at that as well. Like the retention as well and the watch time, they're obviously important. And that's sort of it, really. I kind of just look at those. And like I said, I try to judge these videos independently, but also as a collective across a certain time period to see how we're actually growing, or measuring it against things that we're tracking to see, if we're actually improving with the tweaks that we're making video to video. But I think like that's kind of it. I would say don't get hung up on things like click-through rates. I very rarely look at click-through rates. But with all these metrics, the more you study this stuff and you learn what works, as Gwilym said, learn the definitions of what these things are and what they do, the more you can start to see like how they affect one another. And that's when you can really glean some useful insights from the YouTube Studio. We can move on to the next question, which was from Andra. She said, would love to understand a realistic pre to post-production timeline process. How long on average are you seeing it take channels to fully create one video scripting to posting? Gwilym, you have a lot of experience with this. What would you say?
I would say, so the boring answer is that it depends on what kind of channel you've got. I would say the two main factors are what type of content are you doing? Are you like Mike Shake, for example, and you're going away to your studio to make an invisible katana for a few weeks and pour all of your energy and brain power into this one mega video? Same approach that Mr. Beast does, but with a huge team? Or are you someone who can generate like multiple videos a day? Like, for example, if you're a study tuber who's talking, or a book tuber who's talking about a new book every day, or talking about their study tips, and you're making quick 10-minute videos from your desk. If you're a podcast like us, maybe you can do, 20 videos a month, where Mike Shake can only do one. So there's already this big disparity between types of content. Between channels that are doing similar types of content, I think the other main variable is how big your team is. Generally speaking, the bigger the team, the more kind of communication overhead you've got going on. Yeah, the editor is having to get files from the camera person. The script writer is having to communicate how the script should be done to the creator. I think that can cause a lot of stress for established creators if they suddenly expand their team and then they're like, wait, this is taking way longer than it used to when I was doing it by myself, because you haven't got efficient systems set up from the get-go. So that said, I think for a channel that's got, an editor, a thumbnail designer, and the main creator, I would say a standard 10 minutes sort of talking head A-roll of the type that you might see on like Brian Johnson's channel, or maybe like Matt Diavella's channel. Maybe if it doesn't have a lot of B-roll to shoot, might take, say, if you've got the idea, then it might take, a week or two, or maybe just a couple of days to script. It'll take a day to record. Maybe, like, depending on how intense you are with your feedback for editing, I tend to get quite nitty gritty, maybe too nitty gritty. It could take 3 days if you've got an editor who's really on it, who knows your exact style, and you've been working together for a long time, and you trust them, you just give the creative control. Or it could take maybe 10 days, maybe 2 weeks. If, say, the editor has got a holiday of 3 days at the end of 1 week, again, here we're dealing with managing team members. I think thumbnail design should not take longer than the edit. So yeah, I would say maybe good rule of thumb would be turnaround time total of maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Does that fit with your guys' experiences?
Well, I was going to build on what you're saying with, the more team members you have, sort of the slower it is. There's that old saying of, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, be with a team. I think that's somewhat true for most people. Obviously, there are the outliers where you have your Casey Neistat who films and edits and does everything himself. And he's able to do it fast, but go very far, right? But I do think you do have these people who are, your outliers. It's like the IQ meme, right? It's like most people are in that middle part where they are really overthinking their content. You know, when it comes to the thumbnail, they're going to take 2 days because they're like overthinking, I need to have the perfect thumbnail, or I need to spend some time with my editor. Whereas the guys on the end are just like, boom, 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 boom. We don't need this. We don't need all these fancy edits. Like, these are the specific things we need. And like, let's get the video out. And that's why they can grow quite quickly. And then you have like the low IQ side of that meme, right? Which in my opinion would be like I record a video and I post it. That would be like that type of person who just like gets the content out and it does well. You know, your Emma Chamberlain's, not to call her low IQ or anything like that. But her thing is like, I'm just going to sit in my car, talk to the camera and hit upload. I'd say Casey's on the other end of the spectrum where he's like, I'm going to film 1,000 different angles, music and everything. I'm going to do it in a day and it's up and it's going to get 1 million views. And then you have like your, sorry everyone, midwits in the middle, like I said, who are overthinking everything. And so I think, yeah, with your teams, it fluctuates depending on what's unique about you, how many people you're working with, your understanding of the YouTube content system. But really just like, I'd say simplify for most people. Like, I think especially if you're listening to this podcast, you might be one of the people who loves to like consume information. I mean, I need to know everything. But really, like, if you could simplify what you're doing and just focus on like the actual 5 things that, you know, move a video from pre-production to posting, like, you're going to have way better growth because you'll be able to get better videos out way quicker.
Yeah, like I broadly very much agree with that. I think that the one thing I do consistently see, almost regardless of team size, it's just if there is a team present at all, there will always be the kind of the communication delay that comes with that, especially if you're on different time zones, and especially the editing portion. If you've got an editor who really cares about what they're doing, you know, it can take like, you know, say they take 5 days to edit it initially. It might be that you then delay by a day before giving them feedback. And then it might take them another 3-4 days to implement all of the feedback because it's across the entire video. Maybe they have to make a new custom graphic for it or whatever it is. So I don't think on an individual video, it's unreasonable that that it's likely to take like 3-4 weeks potentially. But I think the key turning point and the key difference is like, how many of those tasks can you be getting underway at the same time? Whether that is having multiple editors doing 2, V1 cuts at the same time, whether it's having a thumbnail designer batch designing thumbnails, whether it's you, just forcing yourself to sit down and script like 2 videos in a day so that you can at least then batch film them and then batch edit them, like that kind of thing. I think that's where the needle can kind of move, is like, how many things can you batch? How many people can you have working on things at the same time? Because an individual video, I think, regularly, whether it is like when I was working with Mike Shake, where it was a bit more like high production, or whether it was when I was working with Justin Moore, which was much more A-roll talking head, I rarely would see, and these were efficient teams, and I would rarely see videos get done in, under 3-4 weeks.
Yeah, I think my last piece of advice, so knowing Andra, she's very much a systems person. They will have their process nailed down. I think the thing that might help speed things up is actually a point from the Mr. Beast production handbook, where he lays out all his practices for getting videos done. He makes a point that don't just set a deadline for someone to do something by and then just like assume it's getting done, or like, don't talk to like one of your colleagues and say, okay, you're getting the thumbnail done by Thursday, right? Okay, great. See you then. Check in on Tuesday. Hey, how's the thumbnail going? Are we still on track? Can you get it earlier? Sometimes people can get things earlier. I know every single time someone messages me to be like, to confirm, are we still on track? It kind of boosts it to the top of the brain. Like, it shouldn't work like that, but it does. And so if you do check in with people regularly, and I think it helps things move a lot faster, and it's gives everyone extra motivation, and they know that someone cares and is going to take it from them immediately. Often, I'm sure you've experienced this with channels, George, where you write a script and the person is like, the script needs to be in by Tuesday. Okay, yes, Tuesday. Script. Here it is. Then you don't hear anything back for a week. and then you get feedback of like, hey, maybe tweak this thing and that thing. And you're thinking, it took 15 minutes to give feedback on this, but it's been a week. Why was I hustling earlier? If everyone knows that the minute that they're handing something over, it's being taken, like the relay race in the Olympics, you'd be kind of pissed off if the person you hand the baton to just like stops and ties their shoelaces. It makes everything run faster. Next one is from Alex, who asks, if each of you individually could tomorrow have your own personal channel blow up and get 1 million subscribers each, meaning you're probably tied to it for the next 5+ years, what topic would it be about and why? George?
So I since we spoke about this in the past, my answer's kind of changed. I wanted originally to have a thing where it's like I make 1-hour-long, 2-hour-long, 3-hour-long videos just out in nature, just chopping wood and building things out of it. But right now it's really cold, and I'm realizing that like if I had bought a small plot of woodland, which you can do for like 3 or 4 grand, it's not. I thought it would be like 20 grand, but anyway, irrelevant. Still a stupid amount of money, but nonetheless, I'm kind of thinking, would I be that fussed to go out there right now? Maybe not. But what I do really enjoy, and what I've consistently enjoyed doing, is grinding coffee and making it, as it were. And what I really like is the idea of like traveling places to go do a really menial thing. And I have this image of like different.
You can come to my house if you want. Yeah.
Well, that's lovely, I'm sure. But I'm sure you'd probably make me a coffee if I came to your house. It needs to be me that makes it. I'd like to sit on like a random hilltop in every country at sunrise and grind a coffee and drink it and just look.
That's great.
Cool.
And film it. That's what I would love to do.
This is great. We always talk about have a repeatable format.
Yeah.
I ground coffee on top of a mountain in Bali. I ground coffee on top of a mountain in Wales.
Dude, that's actually sick. That's actually really
cool. And the thumbnail is you and just the sunrise behind you.
Exactly. I love the fact that we've joked for like 3-4 years now that you're the son of James Hoffman. And now you're like fully embracing the coffee YouTube channel.
Why not? I shook his hand once and that was it.
It was like
you spent all day with him,
dad.
didn't you? Gwilym, you were.
Yeah, it was surprising. He was very unlike what I expected, in that the YouTube persona is very calm and gentle and kind and friendly, which he is.
He was an aggressive bastard.
James Hoffman is in person a lot bigger than you expect and has massive hands. And was
that was one thing you noticed about it.
And he and Gordon, the videographer, got chatting about the different places you can work out in London, and it was just unexpected.
Gwilym, what would your channel be?
My channel would probably be a blatant ripoff of a guy called Kenji Lopez Alt, who is a great chef, but he doesn't do very polished cooking videos like Joshua Weissman, or at least he didn't used to. He would just strap a GoPro to his head, and you'd get this point of view perspective of his like. It was usually the OG videos were usually late at night. His dogs are running around the kitchen. He like comes in, turns the light on. He's like, okay, guys, it's like 11 p.m. I've just come back from work. I'm going to make a grilled chorizo like wrap right now. And then he gets out, he goes into his massive pantry and gets out all the different ingredients. And it's like, okay, I'm going to peel the garlic this way. And then I'm going to like pour in this and that. And maybe not so much of that. I've lost this ingredient in the back of the freezer. It would give you all the exact details of how someone would really do it, as opposed to take your garlic clove, take your knife. You're like, where did these things come from? So it was, I would like to do a like how one actually cooks things.
Sounds like a good channel name.
Not how to actually cook things. Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how well it would do. I think I might need a more photogenic kitchen, but again, that's me going down the route of trying to make things look optimized. Whereas in fact, people, I think, respond better to, authentic.
I mean, my channel would be a little bit similar to yours. It would be along the cooking lines, either cooking myself, but I would probably
cooking
do the
yourself.
occasional, just like put my leg up on the stove.
I cooked my
That'll get you 1 million subs real quick.
You only got about 5 videos before the channel is over.
Cooking every part of my body before I die.
Oh God! I mean, Jamie, you could. Didn't someone do biopsies, like little biopsies of themselves, and then fry?
Did they? I don't know.
Yes.
This is not the kind of cooking content I watch. I do watch a lot of cooking content. It's probably the thing I watch most every week. I like Sam the Cooking Guy. I like his editing style, very simple. I do like Benji as well. But I think I kind of like, and it's not on YouTube, but it's a BBC show, also in CNN, called Stanley Tucci Searches for Italy, where like Stanley Tucci flies to Italy. He just visits all of these interesting people, restaurants that have been going for like 150 years, very simple Italian cooking, and they cook it for him. He sees the process, he eats it, he loves it, he moves to the next place. I'd love to do something like that, just worldwide, in the food world, or to have like my own cooking show as well, because I enjoy that process. But yeah, that would be my job. I mean, travel and cooking and food, like how great would that be?
The pattern I'm noticing is that we all want to get away from having to think about things and just do something with a camera that doesn't require brain work. I mean, it makes sense for us to all do YouTube channels about YouTube and storytelling and production, but
that's an interesting point.
Okay, so next question is from George B. He says, if this season of the podcast accomplishes one thing, what would you want the one thing to be? I think for me, the one thing I'd want the podcast to accomplish this season or the next year in 2025 would be for us to get a couple more formats that we know, is a solid concept that we enjoy making, that people love to watch, and we can create repeatable episodes within that series, and to really just like solidify this podcast in sort of the creator economy place. I think we've put a lot of content out over like the last year. It's actually next Sunday is our 1 year anniversary from when we uploaded our first episode. I think, in the last year, we put out a lot of different types of content. I think we've definitely improved, but I still think there's a long way to go. And I think if we can nail down those series, I think this becomes quite a fun project to work on even more.
I'd be focused on, keeping the process fun. If we are enjoying ourselves and find it useful and informative, that we're talking to each other every time that we record, I think that's the most important thing. Because if we wanted to fully optimize for views, maybe we'd do something different. But we just want to keep it light and fun and authentic. So I think that's the answer. I think, and which a good measure of which is, do I feel good after I've recorded a podcast episode? And I would want that to be the case every time.
Nice. And just to finish it off, it's not like an outcome per se. It's just the thing that is within our control. I just want us to turn up every week that we say we will and record. Like, we got so ahead of the gate with our we had a strategy day, like all day long. We have this whole series planned out. We're in a great position to actually just create a good series. And so if we could just do this series as we planned it on that day, I would be very happy. Final question, possibly the most important of the batch. This is from Connor. He asks, who would survive the longest in a zombie apocalypse? Jamie, I'm curious if you have any initial thoughts on this mammoth question.
Which we have discussed before.
We did discuss it a little bit on Twitter with Connor. I think, I'm probably one of the first to die just because I live in London. And so there's a lot of people I do live next to, a forest in London, so maybe I could hide in the woods, but I'm pretty certain I'm dead.
What if you barricade yourself in your flat? How long do you have, assuming they can't get in?
Probably not that long. People are going to come looking for medicine and food. So, if it's not the zombies that get me, it's going to be the humans who are probably 10 times worse.
So, George, you live somewhere that has a lot of old people. Wait, hang on. We did discuss this. You live somewhere that has a lot of old people outside London.
Mm-hmm.
I live
Well, hang on. This could. You're going to say they're going to be slow. That's if they're like type 1 zombies, you know. But if they're like 28 days later zombies, where they've gone from being a little old lady to like sprinting towards you.
That's true. That's so
That's
true.
more terrifying. Imagine having a zombie old woman sprinting towards you. That'd be nightmare fuel.
That's true. That's true. Whereas at Gwilym, I don't know what the demographic is up where you are. Students, okay. The students get slower in 28 days later? What happens to them?
Everyone's fast.
Everyone's fast, sadly.
You just like get on your canal boat, right? Go to Cambridge
we discussed
on the boat.
this. George has a car and can therefore escape populated areas easier. I do not have a car.
But like you said, Jamie, Gwilym could punt. I could just punt. Yeah.
Can zombies swim?
Live on a boat.
They can't. In 28 days later, in 28 weeks later, the guy escapes on a boat and the zombies can't seem to jump into the water.
Oh,
so we're going to go live in the middle of the ocean. That's true. I've never seen a zombie film where there's like loads of humans living in the middle of the ocean. Why has that not been a thing?
Well, I guess they need to eat eventually.
But you could create something.
So Minecraft,
you could have
Jamie.
But you could have like soil growing on a boat on a massive ship. You could absolutely. You got rain. You got
this
soil
conversation
there.
has been way more manic than the last one we had. Last time it was very clean cut. It was Jamie will die first. George. I think we concluded that George would potentially die trying to help old people escape in his car.
That's true.
But that I might be killed by fast student running zombies. But now Jamie has
thinking
introduced
more about
this.
it.
He's changed the
game.
The goalposts.
I like it. Fine. We'll move onto a sort of man-made island and we'll podcast from there.
So at the end of these podcast episodes, we usually say, go and watch this video next. But there are probably like 5 of you watching right now. So instead, we're going to talk about our newsletters, which you may be interested in reading if you've come this far. So I'm just going to say, Jamie, what is your newsletter about?
Yeah, so my newsletter is called The Creator Stream. The link's in the description below if you want to come and read. It's mostly around YouTube growth advice. So I speak a lot about what I'm doing with my clients to help grow their YouTube channels. I spend the majority of my newsletter editions speaking about ideas, titles, and thumbnails and how you can improve them, because I think that's like a large chunk of what gets you views on YouTube, and it's an area that people struggle with. But you can find all kinds of advice over there. And if you head to my website, you can actually read every previous episode of the newsletter.
Sweet. George?
My newsletter is called Right on Time, also link in the description. Surprise, surprise. And it is focused very much on script writing. I have the privilege of being inside the script writing community that I've created. So I get a lot of people sharing the problems that they're having with their scripts. I get to see how different people interact with scripts that people have shared, the advice that, other people are giving, because I've got my like theories about how script writing works, but seeing how other students from all different niches respond to somebody sharing a piece of work that they've done is just very, very helpful in seeing what people are struggling with and what people want to see, like what they want to see change about the scripts that are being shared. So I'm sharing insights from a mixture of that and all the time I've spent writing scripts for clients every single Friday. So come along and have a read. Gwilym.
Mine is imaginatively titled Gwilym's newsletter, because whenever I talk about other people's newsletters, I just always say George's newsletter or Jamie's newsletter. So I thought I'd just call it Gwilym's newsletter. What I'm moving towards with it is focusing on production. So what actually happens when I'm producing Brian Johnson's channel, or what I've experienced with other creator teams, how people are actually getting videos done. Less so the broad theory of packaging or script writing, but more like what systems are people using, things like what Andra was asking, how long is it taking to make videos, what are the main blockers, what should you have in mind if you want to get your own system up and running, usually with a team. So yeah, go and read below, link, description, you know the drill.